Hi everyone! This is the fourth episode of a Nomminal Future show about the future we built today with Forbes Under 30. And I'm your host, Alyona Tkachenko. And tonight we're talking with Romolo, who is both a co-founder at a startup called MammaPack, as well as senior executive at Coty. And today we're going to discuss a couple of topics. Some of them are: what is the role of community in technology-enabled startups and in the e-commerce startups? How to build a startup without venture funding? And also we're going to talk about what Italians buy and cover a number of future trends in digital marketing that Romolo sees coming. So join us. I hope you will enjoy the show.
I'm really happy to have you here. And the first question I would really love to start with is to learn how you answer the question of like, what are you doing? What do you do? What are the projects? How do you answer to this?
The question number one, sure. So currently I am covering two different roles. First role is a digital marketing director at Coty Inc., which is a multinational group that operates in the beauty industry, and more specifically, I'm working within the professional beauty division, where with my team we manage digital marketing strategies for 5 global brands. The second hat is an entrepreneur hat, meaning that with my co-founder Flavio, we launched at the end of 2018 a startup called the MammaPack, which is basically delivering and selling Italian food and Italian grocery shopping products to Italians living abroad.
Yeah, and I think why I have this question, because it's always kind of a tough thing to identify yourself with something specifically. So I'm kind of like puzzled normally when I need to say, hey, I'm doing this plus this plus this. And I wonder if there is one thing that you identify yourself more with, or it's totally equal and you just tell like to people both of things.
So normally what I would say is I'm a digital marketeer, right? Then whether you're commercializing beauty products, or you're commercializing grocery products, or you're commercializing cars, it doesn't really change much. This is also one of the things I like about digital marketing, meaning that once you are familiar and once you build the expertise with the tools, the frameworks, and the strategies that are required in order to drive penetration and ultimately drive awareness and purchase, then it becomes easy to perform that job no matter the industry in which you're in. So whether you're selling cars or whether you're selling like beauty products, at the end of the day, it does not change that much. So to answer your question, if I were to identify myself, I would probably say I'm a digital marketeer, and I would probably say that's something I've always been in a way, because since I was very young, I've always been working in the space. Even when Facebook was not even a thing, I remember I was.
When was it? Which year?
I remember I was 16, so it was between 2005 and 2006. So Facebook was either not born at all, either it was just born in the US, and it was basically popular only among a very limited circle of people that were in colleges, basically. I remember that at the time, Facebook was really about building networks for schools still. And so the entire digital landscape was completely different versus what we have today. And I was writing articles for a technology newspaper, a technology blog rather, in Italy. And I was writing 2 to 3 articles per day, I remember. And the funds I managed to get from that, my very first job, allowed me to buy a small iPod, the first version of the iPod, and I was very proud. So yes, all of this to say that since I was a kid, I've always had a lot of fun into getting my hands dirty in the world of digital, and I've learned most of the basics. Then most of the things that I still carry on my day-to-day work, I've learned them while basically on my own while I was still in high school at the time. And I think it's one of the big advantages of digital today, that allows you to build expertise without necessarily attending a school. And sometimes you see that the ones that are more skilled are the ones that didn't attend or didn't go to any higher institution.
So would you call yourself a digital native, or you believe this is a term to be used for the younger folks?
I think I can define myself as a digital native. Probably, we are all digital native people born around the 1990, 1991, and so even though the digital world we have experienced is different from the digital world that millennials or like Gen Z are experiencing today. It was more, if I were to say what were the main differences between then and now, I would say it's probably on one end about how willing are we today to declare our real identity online, while back in 2005 or 2006, anonymity was the key, right? You will never go out on a chat with your real name. You would always hide yourself behind the avatar, while now this is not the norm anymore, and it feels natural to say, hey, it's Romolo Ganzerli, this is my Facebook page, this is my profile. Mm-hmm. And then another big difference was probably also linked to of course the technology, because now we are able to have a very high bandwidth, high-speed connections, while at the time we still had to decide whether we want to go on the internet or be on the phone, because you couldn't do the two things at the same time, because 56K modems allowed you either to call, either to be on the phone. Similarly, when it comes to technology and when it comes to platforms, back in the time we were using, probably, I'm not sure whether you were using it as well, but MSN Messenger. And all of the features that were in MSN, and then the tool almost disappeared. Now, no, I think it's dead, and now nobody is using it anymore, and everyone is on Facebook and on instant messaging platforms. Mobile was not a thing at the time, so everything was like technology and anonymity are probably the two main aspects that have then sort of changed the way we approach the internet as a whole.
I think that's a very interesting takeaway, because I didn't think about it that way, that we moved from anonymity to exposing yourself and building your personal brand. However, I just have this hypothesis that where like the whole history just repeats itself. Meaning that probably will come again back to the anonymity and being kind of like private mode, stealth mode, not showing yourself up, especially if you're in the conflict zones like Belarus today, or like Hong Kong, or anything else going on. Yeah, but getting back to where we started, can you tell a bit more about MammaPack and how the whole idea was born, and why you have decided to get into this entrepreneurial shoes, because this is something very different from the corporate world.
It is two different worlds indeed. So thank you for the question. So to answer the question, I'll tell you a bit more about MammaPack and how I was born. Basically, it was born, I said before, at the end of 2018. Even though in reality the idea in its most primordial state was born back in 2015 in Paris. So it's there where I met Flavio, which is Flavio Nappi, co-founder of MammaPack and currently CEO of the company as well. And we met because we were working on a project for our business school, basically. And as we were talking about our entrepreneurial ambitions, because I have to say, becoming an entrepreneur was something that has always been among my wishes, let's say. Even though I never had, until MammaPack, I had never found the idea that really gave me the conviction to go after it. It was something that I've always cultivated, also because it's linked to the story of my family. My family is a family of entrepreneurs, and therefore I think that influences as well the way you grow up and the way you think about work. So I ended up working in a corporate environment, but I've always tried to cultivate in parallel this passion for entrepreneurship, which materialized when I met Flavio back in 2015. And why it materialized then, which I think is also a lesson for like entrepreneurs in general, it was also because I found a person which I could trust, which had my same ambitions, and which was complementary to me from a skill set standpoint. So you realize that actually, launching a business requires a lot of hard work and requires a lot of different competencies, and often you don't have you don't have it all, and you need to, of course, rely on other people's capabilities, and you realize that it's not just to say, but it's true that the sum of the individuals is bigger than the value of the individuals itself. Therefore, having found a co-founder which was sharing my mission, which was sharing our vision to where to bring MammaPack, which was sharing also the same values in terms of how to think about work, what the company culture should be, helped big time. And we started with a like in jargon they would say a minimum viable product, meaning that at the beginning when we had the idea, we didn't know whether the idea was actually working, and we decided to test it, put it to the test. And we therefore launched a very simple landing page that was explaining to all Italians what we wanted to do and why we wanted to do it, especially, and how the service would work. Although there was no active service at the moment, there was just a simple form that would ask people to leave their email addresses in case they were interested in the service. And so we started doing...
Can you just tell about the service a bit, so
Sure.
people watching can understand it better? Yeah.
It's basically Italian products for Italians living abroad. So we are an e-commerce that sells more than 10,000 products, which are sourced from Italy and are sold at Italian prices and distributed across Europe for now at a very convenient flat shipping rate. So the market that we are going after is the market of Italian expats, or at least that's the core market we are going after. And this is a market that represents in Europe roughly 3 million people that live outside of Italy, according to the official statistics. Then the real number is probably higher. And that's the first market. Of course, as we are basically building and establishing a platform to distribute Italian products abroad, we don't want to limit ourselves to only serving Italians, but we want to serve anybody which might be interested in Italian food. So that could be non-Italians, or it could also be restaurants or pizzeria or shops that want to add to their assortments, for example, some Italian products. And we started with a service that was really targeting the Italians, because this is our key and core target, and we want to build familiarity and brand awareness, and we want to build the brand among Italians first before expanding to additional target audiences. And that's also what drove, I would say, most of the choices when it comes to, for example, product assortment, as we started really mass, but the ambition is in the near future to make our product offering a bit more tailored to the tastes of Italian needs, of Italians living abroad on one end, and on the other end also to make it a bit more premium, so that we can also add not only big blockbuster brands to our assortment, but also small producers that are or might be interested in basically having a new commercialization channel for their products, because currently they are pretty limited in the way that they can distribute their products abroad. And this can be also, in the context of COVID, in the context of a country which has been, in any case, hammered by the crisis, because there was a significant share of our GDP which could be attributed to tourism. Our country has been one of the ones that has been hit the hardest, and therefore we see our service also as a way to to basically increase the export of Italian products for small Italian producers.
Romolo, and getting back to the very beginning, do you still remember other ideas that you had but you didn't pursue, and you decided just to tell no to them? Can you share them?
Sure. There was. I remember there was an idea on coffee. So I've always been very passionate about coffee. So there is one thing to say.
So the whole story is about food. I think there is a common pattern there.
Yes. So, and that's the pattern I wanted to highlight, which is it's not the pattern about food, but it's the pattern about as an entrepreneur, especially in my case, it is very important that when you are thinking about launching a new venture, you are thinking about a problem that you faced. So it's easier for you to relate to that problem, and it is easier for you to find the motivation towards solving that problem, and it's easier also to create that connection with your customers. Also because I think one of the keys to e-commerce businesses today is really the community, and building the community on top of building a brand, or building the two in parallel in any case. So that becomes really essential. So back to your question, one area was definitely coffee. I feel there is still a very big opportunity when it comes to distributing and commercializing premium quality coffee by offering to the end consumer the possibility to customize the kind of coffee that he wants to receive, not only from the type of coffee itself, like which beans do you want to use, what's the provenance of those beans, what's the, for example, the cooking method, how they're served to you, whether it's, for example, grounded coffee, or coffee for mocha, or coffee for an espresso machine, but also from selecting exactly which kind of mix do you want to get for your coffee machine. It's a huge market, and it's a market that is lacking still a similar service, which goes very much hand in hand with the broader trend of personalization that we are observing in different industries, among which, for example, also the beauty industry. This is one idea, and another idea that I had, which I never then pursued, was linked more to the broader trend that there is about and around millennials and people our age that are furnishing their apartments not only with furniture but with plants. And there is a huge trend there as well in ensuring and into creating basically an e-commerce venture that can allow you to basically distribute plants and accessories that can enable you to get and to furnish your apartment with plants, which is something that many people are considering now, as there is this trend about green, which from the Ficus Benjamin that I see, from the Ficus that I see behind you, I see it as a
yeah. It is there. Yeah.
Good.
So okay. Again, getting back to MammaPack. So you had this super simple landing page, and you had this like leave us your email in case interested thing. What happened next?
So what happened is that we launched. So once we had the landing page, we wanted to test our business metrics, financial metrics. Now in the e-commerce world, there is one e-commerce metric which is king. Actually, two e-commerce metrics. The first one is how much does it cost you to get a new customer on your website? So the famous cost per acquisition. And the second metric is your average margin per order. And as far as you see that the cost per acquisition is actually lower than your average margin per order, it means that in theory your business model is sustainable. And the more money you invest on media, the more money you're going to get out from the margin that you get from selling additional products. There is of course going to be at some point a threshold to the amount of money to the amount of people that you can get to purchase your product for that same cost per acquisition, because it will likely increase as you increase penetration, as you increase your awareness levels as well. and therefore you need to start working then on the margin. So the purpose of our test was really to check how much would it cost us to acquire a new customer. And we were a bit unsure about which marketing channels to use. So we tested Google advertising, we tested the display network, we tested the Facebook and Instagram advertising, and we realized that this last channel was the one that for us was the most effective, meaning it was the cheapest to get someone to get to our website and to leave their email address. And this was the closest we could get to validating what our cost per acquisition is, because you can assume that if someone leaves your email address, it's someone that is likely to buy from you at some point, or even if you don't assume that 100% of people that left your email address will buy, still you can get a good sense of what your real cost per acquisition is. And once we realized that the cost per acquisition was actually good, and once we realized that on the other end, from a margin standpoint, there was a price point that could allow us to get a margin that was higher than our cost per acquisition, we decided to invest in developing the website. But it was only when we had enough trust about the financials behind the service, and more importantly, behind some security behind the demand behind such product. Because eventually you're always there to solve an issue, and if you are not solving a problem that people acknowledge that there is, then you're not going to get too far.
So what has been, sorry to interrupt, what has been the issue? Was it that people were really nostalgic about Italian products, or like what was the main reason?
So I think there are two main reasons. The first one is emotional, and the second one is functional. Let's start with the functional one, because we tend to believe in our business as our brand has characterized itself for the emotional value that it carries along. Because when you buy products from MammaPack, you're not only buying like something that you need to eat, but you're buying something that you used to eat where you were in Italy. And so everything from opening the pack all the way until tasting the product revives emotions that you're not used to anymore, because maybe you're living abroad for 10-15 years. But there is a functional benefit as well, which is the fact that people need to do grocery shopping. And if you are Italian, you are a bit picky in most cases about what you're buying, because you're used to the Mediterranean diet, which is characterized by some products that are difficult to find outside of Italy. And therefore, offering these products on our website allows people to buy and to basically consume the same diet that they would consume where they were in Italy at a lower cost, because our products cost on average 50% less than what the same product would cost outside of Italy, and with a larger assortment, because in reality what we see is that while we have we have more than 10,000 products available on our website, on an average supermarket outside of Italy, you will find an aisle with maybe 100 products. So we are basically allowing people to choose from 100 times more products than they are able to do, and to get those products delivered at their door. So there is also a convenience aspect at a lower price than they would normally buy. So that's the functional aspect. And then there is the emotional aspect, which I briefly touched upon earlier, which is about the fact that buying this product and consuming this product enables you to connect with your country in a way that only through these senses you can. So everything really, from like opening the box until tasting, it revives the emotions. And it's nice to see, if you go on our Facebook profile, you see that like our shoppers, we publish a lot of user-generated content, and you will realize how our shoppers have different age, and there are also some very young shoppers, like kids of Italians living abroad. And I can imagine that for an Italian living abroad, which has a kid that is born maybe outside of Italy, allowing him to eat or to try the same things that he would try as if he was living in Italy, and the same things that maybe their parents were buying, also create sort of like emotional bonds between between the family members. So there is indeed also, on top of the functional benefit that we mentioned, an emotional benefit, which is indeed very important. Although not exclusive.
And do you think there is also room for such a thing as love for cooking that I would personally associate with Italian families? I would expect everyone to cook and together around the table, or it's just like my guess is being outside of Italy.
No, I think you're right, because certainly what I can tell you is that I don't have the data to support this statement, but at least in my experience, I can tell you that Italians tend to consume more meals at home versus other nationalities, and that's probably also because of the culture. Because historically we've always done that in Italy. And on top, Italian cuisine is very easy, and if you are from Italy and if you know the basics, then you're able to cook a very good meal with a very good combination of nutrients in a limited amount of time. So yes, there is also this point about like cooking together and gathering around the kitchen indeed.
Mm-hmm. And you also mentioned that you have a Facebook page which is super active, and you have user-generated content there. And I think somewhere in your interviews you also told that MammaPack is a lot about the community. So I wonder if you define yourself as being more into like kind of like community creation business and then selling out different things to this community. It's kind of like you have the audience and then you sell to the audience, whatever it is. Or you define yourself more as an e-commerce business.
So I think that's a good question, because in reality, today, in order to succeed in the e-commerce business, you need to have also the community aspect, especially when you want to differentiate yourself versus other competitors, and especially when you are competing in an arena along names such as Amazon, right? Because essentially the products that we distribute are products that are can be found also on Amazon, for example, rather than on other websites. So we offer better prices, we offer a very tailored user experience. So these are things that make the difference on buying on MammaPack versus buying elsewhere. However, another aspect that gets people to buy on MammaPack is also the community, because you know that other Italians buy there, you trust the fact that other Italians buy there as well. There is a lot of word of mouth, and therefore you're more willing to sort of support and contribute to an Italian business rather than to a multinational one. But overall, I think building your e-commerce platform, so building technology and improving the technology should go hands in hand with building the community, which is the reason why, in terms of resources, we allocate really the same amount of resources into building the community and into building website, because we believe the two are extremely important and at the same level of importance.
Mm-hmm. So what have been the major milestones for MammaPack so far? What would you call the major ones?
So we have a relatively short lifespan, because I was mentioning before, we launched the MVP at the end of 2015. We validated some hypotheses already by mid-16. There was then a period that followed that of about 24 months, which we occupied with looking for a supplier, building the website, finding the right operating model, defining where the company should be based, and all of these like very operational things that led us then to launch the website in December 2018. So the first milestone has certainly been the launch of MammaPack.com as we know it today in 2018. The second milestone has been when we got some first recognition from the press, and there have been at least 2 waves of PR, all organic, I must say, which made us very proud, because national and international newspapers basically believed that the MammaPack story was a story worth talking about. and they interviewed us, and we've been basically our story has been told by Wired.com, by Forbes, by Millionaire, by Il Sole 24 Ore, Corriere della Sera, and many other Italian newspapers as well. This was milestone number 2. Milestone number 2, which was accompanied by milestone number 3, which is really about achieving some financial metrics as well. So hitting your first million in revenues, enabling having the possibility to hire people and to create jobs. That's another very important milestone that we're very proud of, that we hit after the first 6 months of activity, really, basically. And after that, milestone number 4, which has been like a turning point for us, has been the COVID crisis, because we found ourselves all of a sudden in a situation in which our demand was basically decuplicated within a few days, and so we were seeing, from X visitors per day on our websites to 10X visitors per day, and the numbers of orders actually followed that pattern. However, our warehouse could not afford to serve such a spike while keeping, the lead time that we promised our audience. So that was a turning point and a milestone as well, because it was when we found ourselves in a difficult situation, and as a team we managed to get out of it pretty fine, I have to say, because in parallel we launched a separate website that was able to serve Italians that were looking for Italian food with a more limited offering that allowed us to free up capacity while guaranteeing deliveries within 24 to 48 hours from the order. So that was something that, in a time when everyone was delivering online orders with 10 to 15 days of delay, we were very proud to be able to serve our customers within 2-3 days from the order. So that was very good. And the entire basically idea, so the entire project from the idea, let's do this separate website, all the way through the execution and the launch, took us 15 days, which is like a very short time. It was very intense, but it was very much appreciated as well by our community, and it gave us some good results, and it gave us also especially the mind space and to focus on the other business on MammaPack.com, to improve it and then to fix the fundamentals in the base so that it can now serve a larger amount of people and of users.
And how did you manage to get to those like 2-3 days compared to 10-15 days that you've mentioned for the regular e-retailers?
So if you think about our business, we are an online supermarket. So as such, as if you go to the supermarket, and you already know what you need to buy, it's very easy, because you just pick the 5, 6, 10 items that you need, you put them in your basket, and you get out, and that takes you very few, like a few seconds only. Same is valid for MammaPack, because when someone prepares their shopping cart, then we need to, from our warehouse, pick the different items, and that takes us time, of course. While if we know that the user is basically adding to their cart always the same products, that makes it much easier for us, and we can prepare that cart in a much shorter time frame, which is basically what happened. So we created a separate. We started from this assumption and from this insight. We created a completely separate website, which was offering some ready-made boxes, which were ready to buy, ready to buy for discounted prices on both the product prices and on the shipping cost as well. And the delivery time was much shorter, because everything was separate from separate warehouse. Another reason why we decided to do so is that during the COVID crisis, especially in Italy, and especially at the beginning of the crisis, it was difficult to find products on shelves. There were a lot of out of stocks, especially for the most popular products. So this approach allowed us to be certain that we could guarantee a certain level of service on a limited number of SKUs.
Okay.
So on a
Okay.
limited number of products which we knew were always available or that we could replace in case they were not, with products that were similar or more valuable.
Yeah, and let's talk more about COVID maybe. And the thing that I'm really curious about is how do you think that's like post-COVID? I would hope it's a post-COVID situation in history books. So how this post-COVID situation and what is going on right now is influencing what we'll see in the future? Because what I observe on my side is that e-commerce is growing everywhere. For example, locally in Kazakhstan, where I'm currently based out of, we have one of the domestic e-retailers which grew significantly, and I also see a lot of new companies in this business as well. And I think they're kind of like going to stay. However, I think the intensity will just drop a bit. But maybe you see other trends as well. Maybe you can share this.
Of course. So for sure, when it comes to e-commerce, the first trend that is clear to everyone is an increased penetration. Because as you were saying, while before maybe in penetration of online shopping among the general public was between 5 and 10%, now that number has gone up. And on top of seeing penetration, I think we also saw diversification, meaning that people started to buy in sectors and in industries in which maybe they wouldn't have thought about buying a few months back. And take grocery, like I think our industry and our sector is really spot on, because we had a market penetration, like grocery shopping, online grocery shopping was about 1% of the total grocery shopping market in UK, which is one of the most developed markets. And during COVID, it peaked at plus 5%. And some of the people that started to buy grocery shopping online, they actually enjoyed the experience and they're continuing to do so. So in terms of long-term trends, what we have seen is there was a peak, both in terms of number of people buying online and in terms of like also horizontally number of items and number of categories that people buy online. And now the base before COVID and post-COVID has increased and has shifted. There has been, one of those black swan events that then sort of changes a bit everything and people's behavior. And now we are going to see more and more people getting used to shopping online. And it's going to be interesting in my case, and it'll be interesting to hear also your point of view on that, where the industry will go, because now we have in front of us sort of two avenues. The first avenue is fragmentation. So a lot of small e-commerce were born over the next few months and have started and set up operations, also thanks to the fact that it's very easy today to set up operations for an e-commerce business. Or at least it's much easier if you compare it to how difficult it was 10 or 15 years ago. On the other hand, we saw the big guys and the big retailers becoming bigger. And you see Amazon posting a revenue, stellar and record revenue growth, along with a bunch of other retailers. And so the question is, are we going to see a market which is going to get fragmented? There are going to be more and more small retailers which are going to be maybe the authority and are going to get most of the market share in their own segment? Or are we going to see rather the big retailers such as Amazon just getting bigger and bigger and eating the entire pie?
On my side personally, what I believe in is that we're going to have a lot of regulations in the tech sector, because that's something that I observe going on globally. And I see that funk companies, which stands for like Facebook, Amazon, and other major like IT companies, they're getting into troubles with the governments, and this happens across the world. So what I believe in is that we'll have more and more push on them in the regions. So let's take Europe. I guess European Union and the governments would just tell the companies like, hey, you should comply, you should support someone else, you should share your profits, etc., etc. So while I don't think they're going to be out of business, I totally don't believe this. I think at the same time that we're going to have a lot of hyper local players who are satisfying a very specific need. And I think like MammaPack is a really good example of like serving a very specific group of people, having community attached. So you have something to tell the customers. And I think maybe if you're seeing flowers of this specific type and you're doing something really specifically, then it's a good option. While I believe it's kind of like living together. However, I don't think that we have a lot of push from the giants, because I think they will eventually get more and more and more regulated.
Interesting. And yes, I think it would be worthwhile under some points of view, because then at some point it sort of hinders like making these giants too powerful, or allowing these giants to become too powerful can then hinder competition, and on the long run it can be really detrimental to the overall like consumer experience more broadly. I think it's also going to be key, to look at supply chain evolution and how supply chain is going to evolve, because one of the bottlenecks, at least what we observe in our case, is that the infrastructure for last mile delivery and the infrastructure for basically taking the product from point A to point B has still a lot of room for improvements. We still have a lot of problems with parcels that sometimes get lost or get damaged because the shipping partners are not treating them properly. And now you see that there are like several models which are emerging. Some companies are going about having their own fleet. Some others are crowdsourcing last mile delivery in order to count on a very large base of people and without weighing too much on their P&L from a cost standpoint. And we see also that there are some more innovative solutions like drone delivery, which just got clearance in the US for Amazon. So it's going to be interesting to see which one of these models will eventually prevail.
Yeah, and I think in terms of delivery specifically, and in terms of the retail overall, maybe it's totally worth to look at the Asian parts of the world, because what I observe, there are tons of really innovative models happening in China. I know that Amazon Go had just a few stores, while the Chinese company, and I don't remember the name, maybe I'll just we'll put it in the text in the annotation, but they had tons of the stores already, and they have been operating without any without cashier, and totally like autonomous at that time. So I think it's totally worth looking there.
Right, totally agree.
Yeah, and talking about this like Asian retail and overall trends, I would like to switch a bit back to the moment when you said that you're both working for Coty and doing MammaPack. And what I'm curious about is how you balance this. Because as we discussed previously during our first call, on my side, I never had this idea of having two jobs at the same time. So when I worked at P&G, I was just working at P&G, and like my whole world was purely P&G. And even now, when trying to do a couple of things at the same time, I really struggle balancing them. So how do you manage it?
So this can be answered via a question, which is multitasking good? No, it's not good, and it's something that I try to avoid. So even though I'm focusing on two projects at the same time, I always like to separate the time I dedicate to MammaPack to the time I dedicate to Coty, so that I'm always focused on one single project, so to say, because that helps then being focused and being clear on what are the important things that you need to deliver, because otherwise it's easy to get lost in the sea of priorities and in the sea of to-do lists that we create. How does working on two projects works for me? I would say it works well, but the reason why it works well is twofold. So on one end, I've always been very open and transparent to my management team here in Coty about my side business. So they've always been very welcoming and very happy about the fact that I had something on the side. And the reason why they perceive it as something helpful is because what I do at MammaPack helps what I do at Coty. In which sense? I think the main difference between running your own company and working for a multinational firm is that when you run your own company, you do HR, then you do finance, then you do supply chain, then you do acquisition, then you do marketing, and then you go back to doing HR. You do a bit of everything, and that allows you to really get a 360 view over what are the different components of your P&L, which is eventually the ultimate things that matter, what are the levers for growth, and what are the factors that you need to take into account in order to build a scalable and profitable business. While when you work for a big company, and especially when you're at the beginning of your career, it's very likely that you're going to focus on just like a very small piece of the equation. And therefore, having the broader picture allows you really to develop a commercial acumen, to broaden your view over, for example, the importance of the P&L, and you learn how to also operate from people that have been working in the industry for many years, and therefore it's mutually beneficial. So what I learned at MammaPack, I applied at Coty, and vice versa. And that is not only limited to the hard skills, so to say. So, for example, knowing how to read or how to build like a P&L or developing commercial acumen is also linked to the way that you think and you see your organization and you think about your organization. Like the two main differences are, and you were working with P&G, so you know very well, like big corporates are very structured and there are tons of processes that, of course, you need to follow because otherwise the company will not be able to operate at the scale that they're currently operating. On the other hand, MammaPack and on all startups, there are not many processes in place. Although you realize that not having processes allows you to become faster, you realize as well that you need some processes in some instances. And so borrowing best practices from big corporate allows you to be more structured and to improve what you do in your startup. At the same time, knowing that certain things can be done also outside of a very well-defined framework allows you and enables you on the other end to become leaner and to make your corporate organization leaner too.
And how do you balance it on the daily or weekly basis? Because the concept that I've heard and that I totally agree with is not to split your life to work and life because you just have life. So sometimes it's more work, it's more into work, sometimes it's more into leisure, sometimes it's more into like meeting friends. So do you do the same with two projects, or do you just split half of the day for this, half of the day for that?
To answer your question on how do I manage on a day-to-day basis, it's not easy. However, I have to say that there are two big helps that I get that enable me to do that. The first one is I'm not working full-time on MammaPack. Otherwise, it would be impossible to manage and to have like two full-time jobs, or at least for me, it would be very difficult. So the areas that I take care of on MammaPack are mainly acquisition and relationship with the supplier, while everything else and all of the things that are mostly linked to operations, so today are more in the hands of Flavio and of the team. Flavio, of course, helps us on the strategy and on leading the strategy and on leading the future developments for MammaPack. So having that full-time resource and having a team that is in any case full-time on the project helps big time. Otherwise, it would be very difficult. And the second thing that helps is dividing your days and your week in slots that you can allocate and you can dedicate either to MammaPack, either to Coty. And I tend to, of course, do everything I do for MammaPack outside of working hours, maybe taking 1 or 2 hours in the morning, 1 or 2 hours in the evening. But it's very important to me, as you were mentioning as well, that your life doesn't end up being only about work. Otherwise, it's really impossible to go ahead. And you know, there is even a very little point about living a life which is just about work. So cultivating personal relationships, cultivating hobbies, of course helps and needs to be part of your daily life because it's what gives you the energy then to perform also on your work. So. And I agree with you. You know, it's been and we have observed especially in the digital industry, in the technology industry as a whole, a bit of a shift from the hustle culture that was advocated by the likes of Elon Musk, Gary Vaynerchuk, and so on and so forth, according to which every moment in which you are awake should be used productively to a thinking which is now giving much more importance to free time, cultivating personal relationship, having me time that you can dedicate to whatever task you want. And I'm very much in favor of following this second approach because on the long run is probably the only one which is really scalable and possible and achievable.
I think I agree on this. However, the only point I would like to add here is that, like on my side, for example, what I learned is just to adjust to how my total body behaves in a way. So, for example, I know for sure that I'm thinking really critically and well till midday. So I'm trying to do everything that is hard early in the morning. Or, for example, I know that on Wednesday, I always have kind of like a low mode situation. It just happens somehow. It's kind of like I start working on Sunday and then I do Monday well, Tuesday well, Wednesday, and I'm like totally useless for work. So I'm trying to balance it. I'm not trying to fight it because there is no point of fighting in my belief. You will be just like planning something for the better version of yourself, which never happens. And I'm not planning this. I'm just saying, okay, I'll wait.
No, I agree, and I think it's very important what you mentioned, like listening to your body and listening to yourself and having time even to think about it. It's extremely important. And what I do in my case, for example, is to pay a lot of attention about what I eat, because that's your it's basically the fuel, right, that allows you to go ahead in real terms. So I really try to get a diet which is as varied as possible, which is rich in fruits and vegetables, that allows my body basically to get the right amount of fuel when it needs it for the task that it needs to perform. And on top, I try to exercise very much because it's at least 3 times per week. It's something I try to do every week because it's important and it gives you also that energy that you need. Romans used to say mens sana in corpore sano, which means sort of you can only be healthy mentally if your body is healthy too. And I'm a stronger believer in this philosophy.
True story. So let me ask a couple of last questions before we move into like trends and digital marketing thing. Do you have any specific numbers that you can share with the audience regarding MammaPack? Because on my side, personally, I would be really interested in learning, like, have you attracted any investment? What is the number of like users right now? Are they all coming from EU, or there are some like global requests that you're managing, but however you're saying like, hey, we're not delivering there? Like, what's going on in numbers?
Of course. No, with pleasure. Without sharing anything confidential, I'll try to give a bit of an overview of the main metrics behind MammaPack. So far we have roughly 25,000 customers around Europe. Around Europe, because Europe is now the only market that we are serving. We are not yet distributing our products outside of the European Union. Although we get a lot of demand from other markets, so in pole position I can mention United States, followed by Switzerland, Norway, and then Australia are definitely the markets in which we get most demand for our products. And now we have started already to ship in Switzerland. It's a market that I'm living in. It's the market that we recently opened with box MammaPack, which is easier to manage for custom reasons. Because whenever you want to basically sell outside physical goods outside of the European Union, it gets pretty tricky because of all of the customs and the regulations that you need to comply with. This being said, so 25,000 customers, then on average we have from 1,000 to 2,000 visitors per day on the website. Our metrics from a marketing standpoint are very healthy, meaning that our cost per click is pretty low, along with our cost per acquisition, which is also pretty low, which means that eventually we are able to acquire customer with a certain ease, let's say, and therefore we need to focus as much as possible on fulfilling these orders with the most excellent service that we can possibly provide. A curiosity in terms of like top products, this is going to be particularly interesting for the Italians that are listening. The top product, the number one best-selling SKU in our portfolio is Polpamutti, which is basically a tomato sauce. So tomato sauce is number one, followed on the second spot by gocciole, which are confectionery products. So it's basically biscuits that Italians eat for breakfast normally. And number three is an unusual one that people normally wouldn't expect in its fonsis, which is basically, maybe you haven't heard about it at all, and it's just like chips. And it was a big surprise for us to actually observe that among the top 3 selling items, there is also, a pack of chips that you wouldn't expect to be so popular. But it's true that it's something that you find in Italy and you don't find outside of Italy. And it's interesting also to note how, despite we have 10,000 products that span across 15 different categories, so it's not only food, but it's food, it's detergents, it's products for your own hygiene, still food is like the top selling product. The top-selling category, sorry. And in this context, we also observed that this trend has been confirmed also during the COVID crisis, even though during the COVID crisis we could see that people were really afraid of not having the possibility to buy food again with ease, and therefore they were stocking a lot. So we would see the average order value going up, and we would see also the conversion rate going up because people were, of course, more willing to buy online than they were previously. From a financial standpoint, we are bootstrapped, meaning that we didn't raise any investment. We built the business model in a way that it would be scalable from day one. So. And there is a huge debate, on this about in our industry about should your company, especially when it is a startup and especially when it is in the early stage, in the early phases of its life, shall the company focus on customer acquisition no matter the cost, a la Uber, which is losing billions per quarter, or shall we build a sustainable business model? And our philosophy has always been, let's build a sustainable business model that can sustain itself even if we don't get funding. Which is something that maybe, especially in our case, considering that we are operating in a niche and considering that we're operating in an e-commerce business which doesn't have such a high cost per acquisition, we can easily afford. Of course, if you are working in the service industry, there are other factors that come into place that might not get you to profitability as of day one. However, this has been our approach on MammaPack, and it worked quite well, I must say. Even though, and I'm sure you can confirm that when you start a company on your P&L, it all looks great and shiny, but then when you get into the nitty-gritty of the financials, and when you actually do the actual versus your forecast and your budget, you realize that there are quite a lot of expenses that you didn't consider, or that were signed quite different.
So it was exactly the question that I was going to ask right now, and that was like, how much money would one need to start an e-commerce business? Because when I'm asked about hardware companies, what I'm telling is hardware is super hard. Even though we're not doing something that is wearable tech, which is even more complicated, or med tech, which is super complicated, we still spend roughly, I would say like 300,000 at least for the like R&D part, and like first run of production, and like having a team. And we had a team in Kazakhstan, like despite focusing on US market, we had a team in Kazakhstan, which really allowed us to keep our expenses quite low, because like paychecks are overall lower versus states, like 3 to 5 times lower, I think. So how much money would you, maybe not you, but someone need to start an e-commerce business?
Very good question. So it really depends on the kind of business that you want to set up, and on the scale that you want to set up your business for. Now, I was saying earlier during our conversations that it's relatively cheap, and it is relatively easy today to launch an e-commerce business versus 10 or 15 years ago. Because if you think about the ingredients, like what do you need? You need, of course, like an idea or an industry in which you want to focus on. Then you need a visual identity, which you can get very easily from websites such as 99 Designs, which can get you a crowd of very qualified designers to develop a logo and a visual identity for you. Then you need a website, and you can use platforms such as Shopify or WordPress plus WooCommerce in order to build it. And even if you don't have a lot of skills from a technical standpoint, you are able to do something pretty decent in a relatively short amount of time, and relatively cheaply too. There are themes that you can buy on websites such as Theme Forest. If you want to use analytics on your website, if you want to install analytics on your website, you can do it with Google Analytics, which comes at no cost. If you want to start sending emails, up to 2,000 email addresses, MailChimp is free basically. So like the cost to set up all of the acquisition machine and the tools that allow you to get from advertising on Facebook or Instagram, which is very affordable, all the way down to converting and getting your first purchase and the first money on your PayPal account, doesn't cost a lot of money and doesn't require a lot of time. What's most tricky is to organize the supply part. But there as well, you have two main options. Either you decide to go with your own facility, and that requires, of course, pretty high startup costs, because you need a warehouse, you need people that are like doing the pick and pack for you, you need money to manage all of the ERP software that will enable you to manage the level of stocks in your inventory, and this cost grows exponentially the more SKUs you have in your store. The other option is to go with a more third-party sellers / drop shipping kind of approach, where you are basically able to sell your products and through a third party that takes care of picking and packing and storing for you on your behalf behind the payment of a percentage of your revenues. And I think that, and what my recommendation to young or aspiring entrepreneurs would be, is start with like a dropshipping approach, see if the model works, and then if the financials are valid, then you can always go back to the other model, which is you manage everything on your own. And it really depends also on what your long-term goal is, on whether you want to build an asset which is very costly to manage, such as a warehouse, or whether you want to continue to rely on third parties. So being ready to sacrifice a bit of flexibility in exchange for much more simplicity on the way that your business works, basically. And we see this is kind of where also the e-commerce world is going, right? Because we see that there are more and more suppliers and companies that are specialized in serving just one piece of the value equation, or providing just one service in the service value chain for e-commerce businesses. So you have businesses that are focusing only on allowing you to pay easily, like such as Stripe or PayPal. There are businesses that allow you to build a website, such as, for example, Shopify. There are businesses that allow you to very easily get a visual identity for your brand, and there are tools that allow you to very easily get your products delivered where you want them to be delivered. So I think drop shipping, especially in this context, could be a very good way to start, and a cheap way to start, especially if you want to just test.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying, but at the same time, I'm still waiting for the number, just like a rough number that you can give. You can say like it's roughly like from this to this.
So I would say it's probably you need between 10 and 15,000 in order to get started, because you want to allocate some of this money to startup costs that you need in order to launch your company in the country in which you're in. If we take Italy, it's going to be in total 10 to 15,000, and it accounts also for some money to put in place some very basic social media management with a freelancer or with an agency, some basic help to get your website up and running, some money to basically clear all of the bureaucracy that comes with opening a new company and with filing your tax return at the end of the year. So on average, I would say if you go for the dropshipping approach, and if you start with a small scale in a small niche, then 10 to 15,000 should be enough. Also because we shall consider that today, unlike a few years ago, if you wanted to do advertising, if you wanted to get known, 20 years ago you had three options, like radio, TV, or billboards. Now you have Facebook and Instagram that allows you to be very tailored and very mindful about who do you want to reach, where do you want to reach these people, and how do you define the people that you want to reach based on interest, on demographics, and so on. So that allows you, even with the 10 euros, or I remember that when we were investing at the beginning of MammaPack back in 2015, our investments were averaging 10 to 15 euros per day. So it's really peanuts compared to how much it would cost you to produce or to air like a TV commercial as you were forced to do 20, 25 years ago or more.
Yeah. So talking about what we have now and what you envision for the future, and talking about digital specifically, and you mentioned Instagram and Facebook, and it feels like you're a big fan of Facebook. At least it feels for me right now. So what are some of the trends that you see in digital marketing and digital advertising right now? Maybe you can just name a few, like 1, 2, maybe 3.
Mm-hmm. Of course. So to answer your question on me being a big fan of Facebook and Instagram, I like the way that they allow you to profile the audience. So I think from a marketeer standpoint, and for a marketeer, they are quite helpful tools. Now, this does not mean that I do agree or that I do support Facebook or Instagram policy in all aspects, because there are like many gray areas which would require maybe hours of conversation in order to be properly discussed. But in principle, I think they are very good tools for marketeers if they are properly used. Talking about trends, I think that as we were mentioning before, so e-commerce penetration and diversification is definitely one of the trends that we are gonna see more and more in the future. And it's gonna be interesting in this context to see whether we are going for fragmentation versus consolidation, and how the supply chain will respond to this sudden increase in demand, which is here to stay. The second trend is about, I think, personalization and into providing personalized experiences to the shopper. Meaning that currently and today, what differentiates our website, for example, to other websites, it's really like the user experience and the way that you can navigate through the products, and that you can add products to cart and you can check out. As I believe, and we're strong believers in the fact that depending on what you're buying, the purchase experience should be different. So it's personalization that should be across not only categories, so providing the right experience based on what you're buying, but also based on your profile. So based on, for example, your browsing behavior, based on your demographics, I, as an e-commerce business, should be able to, or as a digital marketeer, I should be able to tailor my content and the way even the user experience is flexed to your habits. So it's not the user anymore which is getting used to the platform, it's the other way around. It's the platform that adapts to what user to what the user wants, in order to then get a better user experience and ultimately get a higher conversion rate and a lower cost per acquisition. And the third aspect, which is important already now, when it's going to continue to be important in the future, is really about building communities on top of building brands. This is because right now, I think, especially if you look at how also, like, personal relationships are evolving, we live in a world in which even though we are more and more connected, we tend to be more and more disconnected as well at the same time, especially on a higher level. And finding association with a brand, or finding like-minded people that can feel the way you feel, that can think the way you think, helps also building these relationship between people, which is something people are really interested in, and that they really care about. I'll give you an example on this point. On Vela Professionals, on Coty, we have done really a terrific job over the past few years in order to create local communities of hairdressers. So we started from a context in which we were very much only talking to our audience in one way, so the brand to the people, to where we are now, which is really a brand which is a community. It's a huge community of hairdressers that ask questions to each other, that live maybe in the same location, but even if they live, on the other side of the world, they are on our Facebook group asking questions all the time. They have like a national and even by city WhatsApp groups where they ask questions. Before the COVID, they were also meeting in real life, and that fostered really the sense of belonging to a community. And in a world in which the barriers for entry in many markets and in many industries are lower and lower, and in a world in which differentiation on especially in some industries, differentiation from a product standpoint and from a performance standpoint will get less and less important, because all products and all tools will basically get to the same level of sophistication sooner or later. What's going to make the difference is the community, and that's going to become really like the point of difference between brands that make it and brands that don't make it instead.
What I'm thinking about right now is whether having a lot of data on the customer and using this data efficiently fits into your second point regarding platform customizing something for the customer, instead of like all the customers getting the same information. Because I feel like having a lot of data will definitely helps. And we've seen many cases when it helps for good or for bad. But what would you think about this? Like, what would you think about the data and big data being used?
So you're definitely right, meaning that in order to be able to provide a personalized experience, you need to have data about your customers. And this becomes increasingly important not only in order to improve your conversion on the website, so to be able to convert more having the same number of visits, but also in the acquisition, because the fact of having first-party data, like namely, for example, the email address of people that buy from you, enables you and allows you to become much more sophisticated in the way that you target these people on, or people that are similar to the ones that buy from you already on social media or on Google or on other advertising platforms. So this is something extreme, like collecting first-party data becomes extremely important for both the acquisition and the conversion part. And back to your question on what do you think about the usage of big data? They say it's the new gold, right? Like companies that own data are the companies that own the gold, the oil of tomorrow. And I tend to agree with that statement, and I think that in this context it's going to become increasingly important to observe what the role of governance is going to be in this context, and what's the role of regulation in this. Why? Because by definition, if we take machine learning, which is something that we keep hearing about, it's one of the most hyped buzzwords probably, is based on the assumption that a machine can improve the way it works by crunching more and more data. And the more data the machine is fed with, the more sophisticated the machine gets, and so on. And if you think about it, now who are the companies that are getting this huge volume of, that are being fed with this huge amount of data? It's basically the big companies, right? And therefore, they have the technology, and they have the data, and they have the ongoing and the continuous inflow of data from users on a daily basis. So that risks of creating an even greater imbalance between companies that want to get started and companies that are well established already that maybe want to expand into other industry. And the risk is that this will hinder the competitiveness of new players and eventually will be detrimental for the consumer. So it is a big opportunity, but at the same time it is also a big risk, and it's going to be interesting to see how regulation will actually manage to deal with this topic. And on this one, I have a question for you, rather, which is, you were mentioning before that you are a strong believer in the fact that these companies will be regulated one day or another, and I tend to agree with you, and I hope that this is going to be the case because it's definitely something which is needed. However, I'm wondering from like an operational standpoint, in a world in which we have like national governments and multinational companies that are based digitally, that do not have borders, how do you see this could be operationalized in a way?
To be honest, I think that it will be quite close to the telco space and to banking industry, because banking is kind of global in a way. Telcos are global in a way. At the same time, we have tons of regulations on them, and I think tech has been like kind of like a really small thing. Maybe like 30, 40 years ago. Right now it's becoming way bigger, and I see that we're getting like really regional with different agendas. Like for example, if you look at US, everyone will like, let's take AI. For AI, there will be two major players, which are US and China. And China has tons of the patents and tons of research going on. US has tons of research. US is saying we're like pro business. China is saying we're pro people, pro government. Then we're having European markets, and we have like France, for example. And France is saying like, hey guys, while you're being like totally pro pro-country or pro-business. We're focused on the ethical questions, so listen to us, please. And I think we're going to have more and more discussions going on. And I'm not really getting a lot of news from South America, but I don't think this is because there are no news in South America. I'm just not there. Same thing from Africa. Africa is a huge market right now. Like we have tons of things going on in Africa, and we're not talking Africa all the time. And so I don't think it's going to be like a trouble that we're going to have forever and ever. I mean, on the regulations of this area. However, I think we'll have a lot of ethical questions going on, trying to decide if we can adjust ethical principles developed in US for EU or for Central Asia or for Southeast Asia, because like ethics differs by country, in my opinion.
Very true, very true.
Yeah. So let's get to the last question of this discussion, because otherwise I think we're going just to talk and I feel bad afterwards. The last one is a very simple one, and this is on Forbes Under 30 nomination, and how did it help? If it helped, and what do you think about this? What do you
The
feel?
Forbes Under 30 nomination, you mean?
Forbes Under 30.
Yes, sure. So it was for me a big surprise, I have to say. You know, it was one of those things that you hope it will happen to you, but deep in your heart, but you know that it will never happen to you. So when it happened, it was sort of like a big surprise to me, also because it's something I was not expecting at all. And I think it's been a combination of two factors. First, the press that we got on MammaPack helped a lot, and the fact that when this press arrived, I had a pretty good profile which combined the startup experience with the corporate experience with some pro bono activities. Definitely helped them to build the case, let's say, for the nomination. And the way it helped, so I'm very humble in general, so it's something that I don't tend to advertise too much. However, I have to say that at least in the circle of people that I'm surrounded by, it got quite a big impact. And it's sort of you know, I'm always the same before or after the nomination, so nothing changed in me personally. However, it's been a great recognition and something I'm really grateful for. And how was it for you?
I think it was the same. I didn't expect it, and maybe I was just lucky because on our side we just got first rating done by local Forbes, because otherwise I don't think I will get into their Forbes Asia. So I've got there and I was 29, so it was like the last year.
Me too.
Yeah, I would have a chance to get there, and I was like, oh wow, it works. Yeah, that's it. Okay, great. I think we'll just like close our discussion at this point, and thanks a lot for talking with me, for discussing the topics. I mean, on my side, I really enjoyed the discussion.
Likewise. Thank you very much, Alyona, for thinking about me for this interview and for carrying on this initiative, which I think it's very interesting and worthwhile. And I invite whoever is listening to listen also to the other conversations that Alyona has scheduled so far.
And now we can relax.